Howdy guys, Attorney Walter Rudolph. We're going to start a little bit early tonight because I want to go right into what the point of this video is and hit it hard because it's a really interesting area. And I had a client basically call me and talk to me and say, hey, I have these luxury items coming to me and I don't know what to do with them. I'm going to have to sell them off. I know I am because with SSI, I'm not supposed to have all these things. I can't have them all, right? And I was thinking, well, actually, you could keep them, and actually, you could categorize them into these particular things. Now, that is a person who is inheriting these items. There are some people who continue to trade up items until basically they have higher end luxury items. I know people on SSI who have luxury cars because they have a business of trading up and they know how to do that. But what we're going to go through is what the actual law is. We're going to start over here with the annual report for supplemental security income, the program that the president and Congress require the SSA to send them at the very end of last month. Let's get into it real quick. So here are the principal resources that are excluded. You're allowed to have them. They don't count against the $2,000, $3,000 couple limit. So these are things that you're allowed to have that you could potentially have the nicest version of in America, and you could still have them. Here they are. The resources that are excluded from SSI and that $2,000 pesky limit, which obviously needs to be raised. The individual's home and land pertaining to it, regardless of value, and so long as it is the person's primary residence. Okay, you always hear me talking about your house. That doesn't count, stuff like that. Life insurance policy whose total face value does not exceed $1,500. Okay, boring. That needs to be upgraded to a significantly higher amount, but it's there. Burial funds not in excess of $1,500 each for an individual and spouse plus accrued interest. The irony of that one is, to actually have burial stuff set aside, I mean, you need at least 10 grand. You need at least 10 grand to have like the basics covered nowadays. So it's a law that's spitting in the face of those who are on SSI that pass away in this country. Next one, household goods if needed for maintenance, use, and occupancy of the home. Now, wait a minute. We're starting to get into the what does that mean territory? Is that a loophole that we can potentially use territory? Let me read it to you again. Household goods if needed for maintenance, use, and occupancy of the home. Okay, that sounds a little gray roomish, right? So, okay, you might be able to have some things in there that are a little bit luxury oriented items. Next thing, personal effects. Once again, I'm going to say it again, personal effects. Well, I know what you're thinking. What the hell is a personal effect under the SSA guideline rules? Like, could I potentially have a tiara? Could I potentially have a massive collection of Rolexes? What does that include? We're going to go through that. Next one, an automobile if used to provide necessary transportation. Yes, that includes Rolls Royces. If you had a Rolls Royce, a Bentley, that would fall under that. You could potentially have those. I actually know somebody on SSI who does have one of those. Next one, property essential to self-support. Again, property essential to self-support. Okay. Resources set aside to fulfill a PASS, as an acronym for a program. Amounts deposited into either a temporary assistance for needy families or an assets for Independence Act. It's independent. I think it's the independent. I forget what this one is all the time. The Independence Act individual developmental account, including matching funds and interest earned on such amounts. Okay. And then the next one is just the ABLE account. The first 100,000 of the balance of an achieving a better life experience ABLE account. You just have to watch out with those because of the whole Medicaid situation. All right. Now, you guys are sitting there going, well, wait a minute. Where's the luxury items? Where's the trick here? Where's the loophole? Well, the loophole is in the personal effects. Here we go. This is from the Program Operations Manual System, the POMS, directly from the SSA. This is SI 01130.430. This is citation 20 CFR 416.1216. Thank you, P. Stott. Thank you for the $1.99 donation. I super duper appreciate it. So with this video, this section, you're going to start to see the gray room. You're going to be like, wait a minute. Here we go. Background on resource exclusions for households, goods, and personal effects. Okay. A change in the regulations happened effective March 9th, 2005. Establishes that the resource exclusion for household goods and personal effects no longer has a dollar limit. Let me read it to you again so that you fully understand what we're hearing here. A change in the regulations effective March 9th, 2005, right, establishes that the resource exclusion for household goods and personal effects no longer has a dollar limit. Remember, this is effective as of 3/27/12 to the present. Okay, this is like the effective rule, okay, from the SSA website. As a result, beginning with resource determinations for April 2005, SSA no longer counts household goods and personal effects as resources to decide a person's eligibility to receive supplemental security income benefits. Okay, so basically they don't have an SSA rep, hypothetically, going through your house to figure out essentially what's worth what, right? I mean, they wouldn't actually physically go through your house, but I mean, they could potentially with a CDI unit spiel do, that was a claim. But bottom line was, they're not going to do that. They're just going to expect you to tell them what you have. Okay. Part B, procedure for resource exclusion for months beginning April 2005 or later. Exclude household goods and personal effects from resources regardless of their dollar value. Okay. Now, what is the definition of a household good and personal effect? Okay. Household goods. Household goods are items of personal property found in, it's got to be in, or near, somewhere around it, the householder uses on a regular basis. So it's got to be somewhere in or around your home. Okay. The householder needs household goods for maintenance, use, and occupancy on the premises as a home. Maintenance, use, and occupancy. So they need this, right? They need these items to be able to do maintenance, use, and occupancy of the premises, of the house. Examples of household goods include furniture. Now, I'm just going to give you examples of claimants that I know who know how to do this their way. There's a claimant who basically collects furniture that's been thrown away, right? And then over a series of months, they go ahead and, they change the color of it. They change the accents of it, the little handles and stuff. It has to be, I forget what it's called, reupholstered or whatever, where they add like different textiles and fabrics. They do that. So all of a sudden, their house now has some furniture that's higher end. Now, how they actually go ahead and deal with it thereafter when they don't want it anymore, that's not my issue. That's not my problem. Appliances. So we're talking about, just your regular stuff, things that you find in your kitchen, oven, stove, microwave, refrigerator, right? Your dishwasher. So not a lot of wiggle room there unless there were some appliances that you could potentially find of high value and put them in your house and keep them. And then ultimately, when you wanted to trade up or trade, you could continue trading up. Next one, electronic equipment. And this is the good one. Electronic equipment, for instance, computers and televisions. Now, some of you don't have big screen TVs. Okay. The people on SSI that usually fall into the big screen TV category are the ones who basically, are passing away soon. So their big buy is a TV because they just want to relax and watch TV while it all kind of comes down. The other thing is, those who basically, are mostly sedentary and play video games. Then you're going to see big screen TV with, your gaming setup. Otherwise, it's not usually like an 85-inch plus TV, right? It's just that's not usually what you see. However, electronic equipment, for instance, computers and televisions, I know some SSI people who have $5,000, $10,000 computers. And, it's not because they recently got their back pay. And that's because they're smart about how to rebuild and build their computer out to have that true luxury item. Okay. Now, obviously, I'm not going into like the business of if they have a business, but you could see how somebody could buy a computer case and buy the parts separately, build it, and then have a luxury item. And so, it's one of those things where, so Robert Gaines just said my computer is over 10 years old. A lot of people are in that instance. I mean, if you got a 2013 computer, computer's over, or at 10 years old. All right. Carpets, kind of a weird category, but yeah, some people know how to trade carpets. Cooking and eating utensils. Some people, know about real silver utensils, stuff like that. They play that game. And then dishes, your cutlery kind of area of this whole thing. Those are examples of household goods. Okay, cool. Not craziness, but you're starting to see there's some loopholes here. There's some gray room here. Okay. B, items held because of their value or as an investment. Items that an individual acquires or holds because of their value or investment are not household goods. Listen, this is important, even if they otherwise meet the definition of household goods. Now, they're saying here that if they're held for their value or investment, then they don't count. But if this is the only item that you have in that category that you need, and we go back to, for example, for maintenance, use, and occupancy, then how is the SSA going to argue that even if it is held for investment, that you can't be using it, and here's the number one, for maintenance, use, and occupancy? Because think about it. If you have, one TV, what are they going to say? If you have one computer, what are they going to say? And see, that's the problem you run into with some of this stuff. The SSA can't create a rule to restrict essentially these household goods because there's that loophole there of if you have a nice thing or you know how to upgrade it but still require and use it as that one thing, then basically the SSA is not going to be able to effectively argue that, this is being held for value or investment. Think about it. Let's say you have a car. It's a nice car. It's a vintage car. You upkeep it, you clean it, you find other parts on eBay, you keep increasing the value of it, right? But that's your only car. Will they effectively be able to argue that this item has been held or for their value or investment? Well, of course they're going to say that, but that's your only vehicle. How are you going to get to the doctors without it? Think about it. And that's the loophole here. That's the issue here, okay? Now, where it gets even more gray roomish is this whole personal effects situation, right? Personal effects are items of personal property ordinarily worn or carried by the individual. Remember, this is important. Ordinarily worn. These are personal effects. You would wear this or carry this as an individual. Or items that have an intimate relation to the individual. Let's read it again because this is important. Personal effects are items of personal property. It's stuff that is ordinarily worn or carried by the individual. It's stuff that you use, right? That is essentially either worn or can be physically carried by you. Okay? Or items that have an intimate relation to the individual. There's a lot of gray room there. How do you define intimate relation to the individual? How do you define what one person can carry and one person cannot carry? If a person doesn't have the capacity to carry, then at what point do you say, well, we can't just say they can only have this as an ordinarily worn item because that's, prejudice against those who can't lift or carry. Examples of personal effects. Personal effects may consist of the following. And there's going to be somebody in the comments who's like, why are you teaching the SSI people these loopholes and this stuff and how to think like this? And my response to it is the SSI people have a bad life. They do. They don't get much money. Their health insurance is not very good because it's Medicaid and not many doctors will accept it because the doctors that do accept it don't do a lot of the extra stuff that you would see from a high pay insurance, pay to play, medical treatment scenario. Let's just be honest here. So this is my way of reaching out and saying, here's the rule. Think about it. Here's your arguments. Okay. Anne-Marie Johnson. Thank you. Thank you for the $5 donation. I super duper appreciate it. And that's awesome. I really, really appreciate that. So when we get to this part, again, personal effects, they got to be worn, carried, or have an intimate relation to the individual. Okay. So, what are things that might have an intimate relationship to the individual? Things that you inherit, things that you love from a movie or a game, things that related to somebody basically used to be in a relationship with. These are what your brain usually thinks about. But when you have somebody who has anxiety, depression, bipolar, PTSD, then all of a sudden, what makes sense for what somebody might have an intimate relation to all of a sudden gets very murky. Somebody might have an intimate relation to, right? Essentially, a moth collection. Sounds a little odd, but think about it. That is within the territory of this. Now, okay, that's not a luxury item, or it might be. You never know what kind of what moths are worth, but it could be a collection of purses. All right? Personal effects. Ordinarily worn. Purses are, I guess, worn, or carried. They're definitely carried. Or items that have an intimate relation to the individual. I mean, if you're into purses and you got a lot of purses, hey, All right, personal effects may consider, and remember, the whole point of this is if you're inheriting a bunch of stuff and you don't want to have to go through the spend down of losing it, right? Because you want to keep it. This is what you should be considering, okay? Okay, personal effects. Examples include personal jewelry. All right, now that's the big one because you can never really get around with jewelry the whole investment factor. And the SSA knows this. There's no way to navigate to say, oh, you're holding that as a resource for investment and value in the future. A future valuation will grow, blah, 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 blah. Right? Okay. Personal jewelry, including wedding and engagement rings. Okay. I mean, any form of jewelry you could have a personal, intimate connection with. Personal care items and clothing. If you have really high-end clothes or you inherit really high-end clothes and they mean something to you, how are they going to disprove that you do not wear them, carry them, or have an intimate collection or have an intimate correlation to them? Pets, such as a cat, dog, hamster, horse, monkey, or snake. They had to put monkey in there. How many people own a monkey in the United States? Like just a personalized monkey. I know that was like a thing. I know Justin Bieber made it a thing. I know Friends made it a thing with Ross. But seriously, guys, pets such as a cat, dog, hamster, horse, monkey, or snake. Okay. Educational or recreational items such as books, musical instruments, or hobby materials. All right, so now you're starting to see the real wiggle room here, the real loophole situation. Again, educational or recreational items such as books, musical instruments, or hobby materials. I mean, that could be things that have famous people signing them. That could be things that, are literally gold bars that you inherit that are specific to history, or they have great value essentially to you because, you inherited from that person and you used to hear stories about the gold in your life and you take great intimate comfort from having those in your life. Items of cultural or religious significance to an individual, such as ceremonial attire. There are people who inherit some incredibly expensive items, some incredibly high-end luxury items. Some would even say beyond luxury, like one-of-a-kind stuff. What is your culture? How do you define, and this happens a lot, especially in like Indian cultures and things like that, where they inherit certain family jewels, family dresses, clothing, or things used as part of a religious act that are worth extremely large amounts. And as a result of that, they are allowed to keep them, even though it would normally, in many circumstances, violate the resource limit. Items required because of an individual's physical or mental impairment. Items required because of an individual's physical or mental impairment, such as a prosthetic device or wheelchair, are also personal effects. items held because of their value or investment. Items that an individual acquires or holds because of their value or an investment are not personal effects, even if they otherwise meet the definition of personal effects. So what they say here is that even if they meet the definition of personal effects, right? That even so, right? If they're held in any way for value in the sense of an investment, right? Then de facto you lose. You lose because they're allowed to say, no, that's a resource. You're gonna have to spend it off or spend it, for appropriate value. Otherwise, we're gonna penalize you. So all you have to do is figure out how that item has cultural significance to you, religious significance to you, educational significance to you, recreational significance to you, intimate, worn or carried significance to you, some sort of personal jewelry, personal care item, personal clothing. All you have to do is fit these items into one of these categories because they're not going to be able to argue around you having something that's personal. And here's why. Let me explain to you what's ultimately going to happen. When you go to argue this in front of the SSA, if they make a thing about it, the thing that they're going to be worried about is that somewhere, some news station is going to say that this person is losing the ceremonial clothing because of SSI that they were culturally inheriting from their parents who passed away. Someone is losing the jewelry from their grandmother that they inherited, that can be worn, that can be held onto, that can be, carried, that you inherited from this person. Now, look, some people abuse this stuff. They do. And the SSA rarely finds it because how are you going to really know about it? I mean, unless it's one of those things where they're flaunting it and yada, yada. But the problem here is that the SSA, and I'll read it again. Here's the rule. Items that an individual acquires or holds because of their value or as an investment are not personal effects, even if they otherwise meet the definition of personal effects. Okay. But where does that end? I mean, you could say that about anything that anybody has, right? If anything falls into one of these, well, then you could say anything. You could say, oh, well, this SSI person has any resource and they're holding onto it for value because at one point in the future, they might sell it. All you have to do is state that you are not holding on to it for investment purposes or its specific value to the market, but rather you are holding on to it with the purpose of it falling into one of these categories. I'll read them to you again so that you have them here, right here. Okay. Going back to the SSI book. Individual's home, life insurance policies can't exceed 1,500. Burial funds can't exceed 1,500. Household goods, if needed for maintenance, use, and occupancy of the home. Personal effects, an automobile if used to provide necessary transportation. Property essential to self-support, resources set aside to fulfill a pass, the TAMF needy, the assets for independence, and the ABLE account. Okay. Now you're starting to think like a lawyer because you're starting to see that they're going to have a hard time pushing you to not keep your luxury items so long as you can say that they have some connection to you that is beyond that, this whole I'm holding it for value, I'm holding for investment. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Retired K9, thank you for the $4.99 for the doggy treats. Sweetie had a lot of treats today. She is super duper chubby. Shadow is on the couch right now hanging out. He actually was going to be in this room with me, and then I was kind of setting up drums, and he was like, nope, not going to be here. Okay, so here's the deal. Here's the policy for other personal property. Other personal property may be a countable resource. Property that an individual acquires or holds because of its value or as an investment is a countable resource unless excluded under a different provision and is not considered a household good or personal effect for the purposes of this exclusion. Examples of other personal property: gems, jewelry that one does not wear or does not hold for family significance, animals for investment purposes such as a horse or dog for breeding, for resale or investment, and collectibles. So what they're saying is they don't want SSI people to have resources because they want them to be poor, because otherwise they want them to not get SSI benefits. That's what they're saying here. My argument is, okay, what if those gems have significance beyond their value and you're not retaining them for their value in the community or what they may have one day as a fair market value in a future community? How are they going to prove otherwise? Right? Jewelry that one does not wear or does not hold for family significance. How are they going to know that? How are they going to know specifically where that comes from? And you can see where this whole loophole comes into play here. Animals for investment purposes, such as a horse or dog for breeding. I honestly don't know of any case law or situations where there was a situation where the SSA said, we require you to sell your horse. We require you to sell your dog because we believe that, this is essentially a personal property that is countable against your resource limit. Or put another way, we're going to end your SSI benefits unless you basically sell your horse or sell your dog because you one time allowed your dog or your horse to breed. Does that make, come on. I've never seen case law on that. I've never seen case law on a horse or a dog that the person had to sell in order to keep their SSI benefits to not starve. Okay. Okay. Animals for investment purposes, such as a horse or dog for breeding, for resale or investment, and collectibles. Now, look, there's a line to this thing. If you've got a bunch of horses and you're trading and buying and selling all the time, and you're making a side business out of it, and they're able to see that and understand it, and you understand, then yeah, that is outside of the intended purpose of finding value personal to you for that animal. Or for example, something like your collectibles. Let's say you got a baseball card collection, you inherited it, but now you're going through the process of getting into the card game, and now you're buying a bunch of stuff, selling a bunch of stuff, buying a bunch of stuff, selling a bunch of stuff. Then you could potentially convert those cards into something that is a business. But where's the line? Think about it. You hit hard times on SSI. Well, that's not hard to imagine. Like, let's just imagine you hit hard times on SSI. All right, so we're poor. We get hardly any money every month, and we have Medicaid, and we're disabled. Right? That's most of the situation that we run into. Okay. This situation goes, okay, the person then goes to sell the collectible cards. Let's say they're Pokemon, Yu Yu Hakusho, Magic, baseball, basketball, football. I don't even know if they have football cards, but let's say they go to start selling them. And then all of a sudden you're selling this card and you're selling that card and you're selling this card. One card goes on eBay. One card goes on Facebook Marketplace. One card goes on whatever, Craigslist, whatever. Can they argue that you are now using them for the purpose of, future sale value, investment potential? Where's the line? When did you convert over to this? Well, now I'm in the business of doing this thing. And that's the problem I have with this whole situation, is that it is fraught with ways that they will lose it outside of the SSA. Okay, so let me give you an example of the court system. You have your SSA docket, right? Initial filing, reconsideration, ALJ hearing, AAJ, appeals council, your appellate judges at the SSA docket. And then at that point, the SSA ends. That's it. No more. That's it. That's the SSA docket. Then above that, you have the district court, the circuit court, and the Supreme Court. Now, they know that most SSI people are not going to be able to find an attorney to fight a claim like this. They know that. They have a full understanding that the SSI people in this situation are going to have a very difficult time finding a civil rights attorney to file this, even with the option of EJF fees available. That's a practical application reality. My argument here is, when we look at this, how does the court, at what point does the court know? At what point does the judge have proof that this item you have an intimate connection to, and you're holding on to it for purposes other than value, marketplace, and selling? Let's go back to our horse. You have a horse. Let's say you bought the horse. Okay? The horse does functions for you. You have bipolar, you have PTSD. The horse calms you down, right? The horse gets pregnant, has little baby horses. You can't afford the little baby horses. You sell them. Does the Social Security Administration have the right at that point to then dictate to you that you must sell your horse or lose your SSI benefits? I've never seen that case. Next one, you have a dog. You inherit the dog from an apartment that had a dog that basically lived in the apartment. Nobody was taking care of the dog. You start taking care of the dog. You love the dog. Okay. We've all been in that situation. Most of us have. I still swear, it's like, like Disney, Sweetie is like a Disney princess and I'm her damn sidekick. I'm like the pet of her little world. Now you've got this dog. The dog gets pregnant, creates a bunch of little baby puppies. Now, look, I understand it. The first time the dog gets pregnant, does that count as you making a business of it? What about the second time? Dog gets pregnant again, has puppies again. Is that the line? Well, I think that's more towards the line, but I don't think the line is anywhere near the first dog getting pregnant. Now, look, you have other people that will try and abuse this. They'll have 10, litters coming and they're, selling puppies here and there, left and right. They'll puppy mill, and do that whole spiel. I get that. But where is the line? I don't feel, if I were a judge, that if the person's dog got pregnant again and they sold the puppies, that would fall within the line of essentially you have to give up your dog to keep your SSI benefits. That to me would be an immoral and unethical thing to do to a human being that is an American receiving SSI benefits. That to me would be unethical. Now you see it a third time with that dog. Now we're starting to get right to that line. Now we're seeing that line. Now we understand that line. Okay. They put down here examples of other personal property that shouldn't count. Gems. Gems. Okay. Let's say you inherit a necklace. Okay. I mean, the reality is nobody's going to know how you get this necklace, right? It's just like, let's say you inherit, unless it's in a legal contract or some sort of trust document or a will or something. If you inherit something, right? And the way it usually happens is, grandma says to you, hey, I want you to have this item here, have it before I pass away. That way you can always think of it from me. Then an SSI person, what a surprise, comes on hard times. Whoa, didn't see that coming. They take their little tool and they start cutting the gems out of it. They start selling those gem pieces. Is that them in the business of being somebody who holds gems for the purpose of current or future valuation? No, I don't think so. I think that would be immoral and unethical for a judge to decide that is a reason that somebody should lose their SSI benefits. Now, look, if they start to sell off those diamonds, right? And I know people abuse this. I get it. But if they sell off those diamonds and they know how to pick out diamonds and play the game, and then all of a sudden, through this whole back and forth thing, right? They go, okay, all right, here, okay. I'm going to sell off this diamond here to get these diamonds here, and then I'm going to repackage these diamonds over here into this thing here, and then this thing I'm going to sell through here. I'm going to make extra money. Now that we're starting to get into gems being held for the purpose of that market evaluation, that selling things. But otherwise, I don't see that it would be ethical for them to go after you for having that luxury item. It's just not a good situation for the SSA because there's no bright line way to approach this. Here's an example that they give us. Mrs. Willis received $10,000 from an insurance settlement. Okay. The claims representative, the CR, later develops how she spent the $10,000. Remember, whenever you guys get big cash money, when you spend it, you gotta, with the spend down, you gotta have an accounting. You gotta be your own little actuary. You gotta make sure you outline how you spent it, get your receipts, all that stuff. Mrs. Willis paid back creditors with $7,000 and purchased $3,000 in jewelry that she ordinarily wears. Because Mrs. Willis wears the jewelry, the CR must determine if the SSA can exclude the jewelry from resources as personal effects or accountable resource in the form of other personal property, right? So now the question is, does she have an intimate connection to this jewelry, right? Does it help her with her impairments? Or is this something that, hey, the SSA is going to say you either get to keep the jewelry for $3,000 or you lose your benefits or you get rid of the jewelry. Mrs. Willis's statements establish that the jewelry has no family significance and that she purchased the jewelry for its value. Now, let me explain here. She made the statements to the SSA that she purchased it with no family significance and for its value, right? So they put in there with no family significance so that your brain's thinking, oh, well, she doesn't really want this stuff. She just bought it because she wants to look pretty, right? And for its, and they even highlight it. They even highlight it for its, and then over here value. They highlight it, okay, as a means to spend down the $10,000. Okay, all right. If you buy something and tell the SSA that you bought it with the intent to have it for its value, then you're going to get into trouble. And just to be kind here, guys, just to explain to you, and I know some of you essentially feel that what I do is amazing by telling people what the law is and where the wiggle room is. Other people feel very, very strongly that I'm a horrible, horrible person for explaining the law to you guys. Here's a person that had to say this. This one I think was on YouTube. Lawyer, you are obviously talented, educated, capable. I would even go as far to say blessed. And with those gifts, you do what you're doing. You're teaching people to lie, but yet call it stretching the truth, or you teach them not to give the entire truth. How many watching this remember their mama say that that's the same as lying? I don't know if you believe in heaven. I don't think it'll matter. You better hope there's no hell. For the sake, I hope there isn't for you. Okay, so let's say that an SSI person uses this knowledge, this law, to their advantage. And instead of losing their SSI benefits, they retain their jewelry. Where's the ethical line on screwing over a poor person from being able to have one nice thing in their life because they just paid off $7,000 worth of creditors who were calling them and sending them letters? Where's the line? And the point I'm getting at is this: if you say to them, no, I bought it for its value. I wanted to use it for the spend down purposes so that I wouldn't get in trouble with the $10,000. I bought it for its value, right? No family significance. I just bought it for its value. That logic right there is what creates essentially this whole, like, you told them exactly what they needed to know. And remember, they're going to ask you those exact questions. Oh, okay. Did you inherit it from your family? Like, why do you have it? Did you just buy it to go ahead and make sure you could keep your benefits? Oh, yeah, that's pretty much what I did. And that's what they do. That's what SSI people do. They just go along with the flow because they don't know the law. It's like me with my student loans. People, I had a worshipful master from the Orlando Blue Lodge say to me, and this is on YouTube because I haven't been to the lodge in forever. He's like, you need to pay back your student loans. I don't care how much they are. Blah, 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 all this crap. Spewing this crap. And I was like, look, dude, look, calm your fanny pack down. And that's part of the problems too. I view them as equals. I view them all as equals, which sometimes, judges are up here, but I view everybody else as equals. And so the problem here is this, okay? I didn't know what I was signing when I was 17 years old, getting ready for college to try and be able to afford going to this thing that I was told was the most important thing in my life up to that point. So when they were able to charge 2 times, 3 times, 30 times what somebody 10, 15, 20 years before had to pay for the same thing, everybody was cool with it because nobody knew what was going on, except for those who were making cash cows out of academia. Once again, the government being unethical, being immoral. So if you say to the government, yes, which an SSI person would do. Think about it. That's how SSI people do this, right? They don't usually have a legal education, right? They weren't a paralegal, they weren't a lawyer. So they're going to be like, "Hey, did you go ahead and just buy that to spend this thing down? You know, it's quick, easy. We can see a receipt just so that you keep your SSI benefits." And the person can be like, "Yeah, yeah, pretty much, pretty much." So this person thinks I'll go to hell for helping the poor. Fuck that guy. Right? Because that's basically the same Christian bullshit that got me here. That's a bad Christian. There's great Christians. That's a bad one. So the problem I have with this is that this person now who wanted the jewelry, who essentially, you know, from an insurance settlement got the money they've never had, right? For a long time at least. And now they've got to get rid of the jewelry that they bought so that they can make SSI benefits happy, right? That's what this comes down to. The CR correctly determines that the jewelry is not an excluded personal effect because an item purchased for its value cannot be a personal effect. The CR also correctly determines to consider the jewelry as other personal property and evaluate it using normal resource counting rules, which means that it's worth $3,000. You get $2,000. You're 1,000 over, you lose your benefits unless you sell it. Okay. And then they go through how you verify the current market value, determining the equity value. We can do a video on that later. But I wanted to do this video because I wanted to explain to people wiggle room here with luxury items. Now you know exactly what they're looking for. You know exactly what you have to have as a connection to this item for them not to be able to fulfill their elements, for you to have your little ice cream on a Sunday morning, which this person, the one who said those mean comments, didn't have. So I hope, guys, I've helped you out with this thing. Pat Vega said, where do you get the info from, website or book? Well, I mean, this is all from the internet because I printed it out. Some of it's from a book. Like this was a book, but I just downloaded the PDF. This came from the annual report of the Supplemental Security Income Program. That's basically where I got the general outline for the items. I mean, I knew them. I like to read from things while I'm doing it because I like to have things in my hands. The other thing I basically used was the actual POMS. It's the regulatory book, which is basically here. There you go. I don't know if you can see it. It's not that one. You need that one right there. I don't know if you can see that. I'll read it to you real quick. It's SI 01130. Again, SI 01130.430, 01130.430. Okay. That's where I get it from. I get it from the SSA books. And then I apply on top of that my knowledge, experience, and pissed offery to go ahead and explain why I'm not happy with how we treat SSI people. I'm not happy with this. Okay. Now we're going to be doing one more video, and then I have to go to USPS, because basically I have to, my shoe's stuck on something, because I have to mail off a bunch of initials and client forms and stuff like that. So we're going to do one more video. It's going to be way shorter because this was 43 minutes. Next one's going to be like 10, 15 minutes tops. And then I'll go to USPS and keep working. But I will catch you guys a little bit later. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I do not support those people who find a way to abuse the system beyond the measure of what's acceptable. Okay. But when it comes to that middle ground, those loopholes right in there, you know, I'm not a big fan of the SSA removing items that are specific to a person. Look, if you get a little money as an SSI person and you get to spend it on something that's nice for you to have, I think there's no argument that every item that can be purchased that's nice is of value, potentially to be held by you in a special place. And if you hold it in a special place, you put it in a nice cloth, you wrap it in silk, you put it in the sock drawer, right? Or you put it in a safe if you have one. Well, then you're holding it for value because that's how you see it, is of value. I disagree with that logical analysis. My analysis says we need to allow SSI people to find a better way to live, because what we provide them is not enough for them to live in a better way. And that's the whole bottom picture. And so now you see the spectrum where it is clearly not within the SSA's right to count this as a resource, where it is clearly something that they can count as a resource, and all of this gray room in between. Okay. Anyways, guys, I will catch you a little bit later. Walter, did you get a new chair? No, this thing is squeaky. It's terrible. The feet popped off. I destroy chairs because, as you guys notice, I move around on them a lot. I'm actually good at fixing them at this point, but I also don't have tons of time because I'm fixing the house next door. I have another one of these chairs right here, but it's a little off balance. I bought this whole set for, I think it was $600. And the ironic thing is that the reason you don't see the dogs a lot is because I'm sitting at a bar that's like used as a bar, but it got me up high to be in front of this right here, this backdrop, and then you don't see the dogs, especially Shadow, because when he jumps up, he's like a foot down here. So he'll pop over all the time and be like, hey, what's going on? And he'll jump up and he'll want, some snuggles and kisses, but he's way down there, So anyways, guys, I will catch you at the next video. And what's happening is we're going to be talking about specifically how the administrative law judges are in a little bit of hot water with the federal justices. And we're going to be explaining what's happening there, why the federal justices are not happy, because remember, these claims that keep getting appealed, they end up in front of the federal justices. And ultimately, the federal justices have to make a decision as to what's going to happen with the claims that they receive from these administrative law judges. Because remember, administrative law judges are usually below judges, and then you have like federal justices all the way up to the Supreme Court, which are the supreme justices, the top of the top. So I'll catch you guys at the next video, and I will be back in 5 minutes. Thanks, guys. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.